Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders to help it grow. Thursdays with John Riossi. John, thank you so much. I know you're very, very busy. There's a lot of SBA stories you're working on. So, John, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good
Lance Sexton and Katie, of course, our regulars. Welcome back both, and it's good to see everyone here. Lance, let's start out with a quick plug. What are you doing next Tuesday?
We're going to talk about business acquisition loans and some of the new requirements in the 50-10-6. We're also going to come back and weave back the impact that PPP and EIDL has on a business acquisition loan, because there are some new guidelines that were released by SBA that you as a participant banker need to be aware of if a selling business has a PPP loan. So we're going to talk about those requirements.
Yeah, we're also going to correct our subheading. We're also going to include the COVID guidance. I believe that came out early August, that we need to do. Please ask questions. We got a ton of questions. We have some held over from yesterday, so thank you. Anything SBA related, obviously, we can do that. Hey, November 19th, Lance, this is a red letter day for me personally. My sister was born today. My mother's birthday is also today. And my daughter-in-law's birthday is today, 3 in 1. So I'm going to go play the lottery.
There you go. Also, Bob, the Xbox X is available at Walmart online.
Oh, is that today? All right.
Well, for those gamers out there.
Well, there's a gift idea.
Are you following the guidelines? It was very clear. Have you incorporated that into your credit memos? There were about, Lance, what were they? Or Katie, there were about 12 items that we had to follow.
Yeah, there's about somewhere between 10 and 12.
Dated July 28th, 20 guidance. Very good.
Lance, I think most...
No, can we go back? Go ahead, Lance.
I think most institutions are instituting some additional requirements in the underwriting process to address COVID-19 and the pandemic, and they're weaving in the SBA underwriting requirements. And it absolutely, when you talk about a credit memorandum, it has to be discussed.
Lance, can we do one after the fact? What I mean by that is, I'm not talking about dating after the fact, but can we do an addendum dated November 20th?
Oh, I don't see why you couldn't. And bring that information in. Yeah, absolutely, you should.
Yeah, very good. Fiscal year 21. So that is the first 7 weeks, if my math is right, of this fiscal year. What percentage of 7A loans are involved with change of ownership? Oh, and we lost the correct answer, Joseph. What happened?
I'm scary to say, I don't think any of those are right.
Well, one of them's right. 12% is correct by, let's see, what is it, Katie, number or volume?
I believe that is by volume.
Right, and then it's 22% by number. What is it, Joseph? We can only have 5 answers. Is that the problem?
Well, this is the loan volume question. The next question is the dollar amount question.
Oh, you didn't combine them. Okay, well, we're just obviously so the answer is 12% for loan volume, and then we'll go to number 3 since we'll see who else paid attention. I think the answer is 24%. So let's just move on with that.
Hey, Bob, I just want to point out that I'm usually the one that is off script, and
hey, we should do a screenshot of that. Everyone got it right. Congratulations. The purpose of this is we want to emphasize that, hey, this is an important part of lending. Be on top of it. It's a great niche. Lance, in terms of spread, the spreads tend to be a little bit higher than, say, on a real estate-centered transaction.
Well, the other thing, Bob, is we had this discussion yesterday with our guests, with all the baby boomers getting to retirement, there's going to be a lot of businesses change hands. The other thing that's going to happen, the pandemic is going to create a lot of circumstances where struggling businesses will be on the market, and there will be new buyers with capital that come in and buy those. So I think it's going to be 2021 should be a huge year for change of ownership loan.
I'm sure we all have these stories. A friend of mine runs a restaurant that I frequent, and he just threw up his hands and basically turned it over to his general manager, to his number one waiter there, and said, "Take it over. I'm through. I can't deal with this anymore." So this is important, and it's important because we have 16 pages that clarifies this as clear as mud. And so the first thing is, do you think the IRS will tax PPP loan forgiveness? And it's about split 50-50. Lance, what's the story?
Well,
And go ahead, Lance. I'm going to let you go.
It's kind of and this is the point, guys. I apologize for having a negative stance on things every once in a while, but we were talking about this before we came on the show. No, they're not going to tax forgiveness, but yes, they're not going to allow you to deduct the expenses that you use the PPP loan proceeds on. So in effect, you're going to pay some tax on the forgiveness.
Lance,
It's kind of a roundabout.
Yeah, so
It's kind of a roundabout.
I'm a PPP borrower, and I book a loan, and therefore it's income to me. I've never heard of that accounting treatment.
Well, the PPP loan forgiveness is not actually income, but what the IRS is saying, let's say you got a $50,000 PPP loan and you used it on payroll. Well, $50,000 worth of your payroll in 2020 is not going to be deductible as an expense according to the IRS release. Now, does that make sense? Yes, it makes sense. But does it in the pandemic? Small business borrowers didn't come to the table and take a PPP loan thinking, oh, well, I'll have a tax consequence to this. And let's just say you got a $50,000 PPP loan. You used it all on payroll. You're going to get full forgiveness. Corporate tax rate is, let's just say it's 25% on this borrower. That's going to end up costing them $12,500, $13,000 in additional federal taxes because they couldn't deduct the payroll that was paid with the PPP loan proceeds. So they're not technically taxing the PPP forgiveness, but they are in a roundabout way.
Katie, and this opens the Pandora's box for state taxes.
Right. I have been kind of following that. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of update there. I just looked into it yesterday. There are still some states that are looking into it. Unfortunately, they're just not really receiving enough in taxes in general in those states to not consider including this, because they do need the money during all of this pandemic to pay for the changes they've had to make during the pandemic and things like that. So really, it's a double-edged sword. You get the PPP borrower who doesn't really want to be taxed on this, and it's not really fair to them. But then you also have the state that's paid a lot that needs the taxes. So it's really a difficult situation there.
John, I'm going to put you on the spot on this. My opinion is this will not stand. It is against the spirit. While Lance is correct, it is technically correct. It's against the spirit of the program. We know there's a lot of guidance. There was that trade organization letter that pushing Congress to be proactive. When do you start seeing, I want to ask you specifically about this, because I personally think the Congress will say, no, we're not going to do it. But when do you start seeing trickles of guidance coming out of Congress?
Certainly not until after, the election is finally settled one way or the other and the new Congress takes place. But you're forgetting, I guess, one thing, Bob, is Congress might oppose this, the individual members, and they might think this is a bad idea and why are they doing this? But they have to collectively act, and they've shown, for whatever reason, no interest in really digging into PPP anymore. So far, I mean, there's been no action on additional stimulus, so they have to,
Well, you're a ray of sunshine.
Well, they just seem to have so much on their plate that they put and they prioritize, and you can certainly argue that they don't correctly prioritize their issues, but I fear this would be, relatively low on the totem pole. And for one of the reasons Katie said is that everyone needs money. I mean, the federal deficit is enormous.
Do you, now, I just want to clarify something. So do you think that the issue is it's low on the totem pole as opposed to the issue that they're against the intent or the legislation or the principle?
I fear it's the type of my fear is it's the type of issue that just might not be addressed. Having said that, it might not be addressed in time in an adequate manner quickly, but it might be 6-7 months down the road they might address it. So there might be an argument for putting forgiveness off if this is for an individual company, if this would amount to a significant deal.
Well, Lance, I know your family members have received PPP loans. What are you advising your brother and your family members?
I'm telling them to apply for forgiveness in 2021 because most small businesses, if given time, can react and plan and prepare for a tax event like this. But, here we are in November and they've got 43 days to figure it out. I think that one easy solution is to push it off into 2021 and give yourself another 12 months to figure it out.
What do we got here, Katie, on the next slide? What are we talking about? Safe harbors, and what's the intent of this verbiage?
So this is just extending a safe harbor on that ruling, on the tax ruling. And it really only applies in very specific situation. If I'm understanding this correctly, they have to have the eligible expenses paid or incurred during 2020. They also have to have received the PPP loan and at the end of the year expect it to be forgiven or after 2020. And also, subsequently, in the subsequent tax year, the taxpayer must request forgiveness if that forgiveness is denied or they never request it. So it seems like there's 3 things that have to be filled in order to get that safe harbor.
But what we're saying, if I'm reading this correctly, and who knows, we're all sort of groping in the dark here, but if we delay this to 2021 and we recognize the income or the taxes, or we don't do that, we're okay from the IRS standpoint. Is that correct, Katie?
That's how I'm understanding it currently, and I'm sure they'll probably have to clarify this more eventually, but that's my understanding right now.
If you want these, there's 2 notices. I think we put them in the dashboard. Joseph, is that correct? Are they there? People can download them in the handouts?
Yeah, I'll upload them right now.
Okay, we'll put those in there, and we can do that. Russell agrees with you, Lance. He says we've had CPAs that are advising their clients to not file forgiveness until next year. So I think that's...
I had a conversation, Bob, with what I consider a very good CPA who said just for general purposes of buying some time, he's advising his clients to do it in 2021. Now, they'll probably be popping out the second week of January with their forgiveness application, but he's telling his clients that at least buys you another 12 months to figure out or to let Congress do something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I don't think it'll stand, but hopefully I am right. And
guys, from a banking standpoint, Bob, it sounds ludicrous for me to sit here and tell you they ought to wait until 2021. The banks want these forgiven as soon as possible to get them off their books.
Yeah.
But they also want a viable small business borrower going down the road.
Yes.
Well, we're going to talk about that. I mean, there's a lot of time bombs that are in this legislation and that could occur in terms of, especially if you're talking about over $2 million for forgiveness and time bombs and loan amortizations, and that can jeopardize future operations, Lance. And I see John nodding.
There,
The word existential becomes a big deal, trying to pay back, a big loan in a short period of time for a small business.
Well, you can't do it. You can't do it. Yeah. So the lot of servicing and workout and the strategies. Hey, let's go to some questions from yesterday. Michelle said, I was wondering if anybody has heard any feedback on PPP forgiveness apps that have been sitting at SBA for 90 days or more.
I'd have to leave that to our participants. I don't know that I've heard of anybody that has applications that have been sitting there for 90 days or more. But SBA is working as hard as they can to get these forgiveness applications processed. But the sheer volume of applications eventually are going to cause it to bog down and be slow.
Joseph, let's ask this question tomorrow, what their average or what their feedback is. Question from Michelle. I was wondering, Pamela, keep going one more. How are we handling, no, we don't have it. All right, I'll read it. How are others handling the Schedule C filers who now reflect a negative, i.e. a negative cash flow on their tax return? And if they wanted to submit the 3058S and attest to the fact they spent the dollars correctly, they still have to provide the backup document. Quote, we just aren't required to review it.
That's a tough question because sole proprietors would provide a Schedule C to determine their PPP loan amount. Their Schedule C probably showed it was based on net income off of the Schedule C, and all of a sudden they have a loss. I think in addition to the Schedule C, maybe just a breakdown of the expenses and how they spent the PPP loan proceeds, a payroll report, something to back it up. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of the 3508S. You're not going to see a lot of those reviewed in those circumstances. So I think you'll be okay. But I think as backup, I would request, give me documentation showing the categories and the amounts that the PPP loan proceeds were used for.
John, I'm sad to say that we are not coming to Washington this year for our secondary market conference. You were kind enough to speak last year. So we're going to do that virtually, and we're putting together a cool program for that. And there's obviously a lot of questions that we will be answering on that, and that's fun putting together. Hey, a couple personal notes. Edgar, thank you very much for your nice comments. I appreciate that. And Jack, get well soon. So those are all. What's that? And John, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Bob.
And I'll keep asking the question, and you can keep on dancing. But hopefully, one of these days, you'll be able to be a little bit more definitive. But no, we're all in the same boat. We don't know.
Yeah. I just add one thing about November 19th, because you mentioned all of the dates. Today is, I just verified this because I had it in my mind, but I wanted to be sure. Today is the 157th anniversary of the Gettysburg Address.
That's right. That's right. Very good. You're right. And also, I think Charles de Gaulle's birthday is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All right. Well, now we're going down the rabbit hole, and the numbers are dropping like a rock. So thank you for joining us today.
France, though.
for Coleman Report Live, and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great afternoon.